Alright guys, in this video we'll be looking at the distance formula, and that formula is written there. It's d equals the square root of x2 minus x1 squared plus the quantity y2 minus y1 squared. And what we're going to do is we're going to use this distance formula in order to find the distance between 2 points. So for example, I've got a line segment here. I've got the line segment AB. And what we're going to do is we're going to use this formula to find the distance from this point A to this point B. So this is what we're going to use the formula for. So we can it'll help us find this distance. So the first thing I'm going to need to do is replace those x2, y2, x1, y1, and replace them with some values. So let's go ahead and get started here. Now that x2 you see there simply means the second x. Now I'm going to call point A my first point, or my first order pair, and I'm going to call B my second. So x2, second x. The second x value we have is 4. What we're going to do is we're going to subtract the first x value. And the first x value we had was right here. It's -6. And we'll do that here in a second. Right now all I'm doing is plugging in the values. Now I'm going to do the same thing with y's. The second y value is right here. It's -1. We're going to subtract the first y value, which is right here. It's the 3. And then we'll square it. So at this point all I've done is replace the x and the y's with some values. Now we're going to do the actual math here. So the first thing I'm going to do is what's in parentheses. Remember, it's orders of operations. So if I start with 4 minus a -6, 4 minus a -6 would be a +10. Then I'm going to do the other set of parentheses. -1 minus 3 would be a -4. So at this point I've done what's in the parentheses. Now I'm going to move on to the next step, which is to square, or the exponents. So I've got 10 squared, which is going to be 100. And then I've got a -4 squared. A -4 squared, -4 times -4 is +16. Now what I'm going to do is go ahead and add that 100 plus the 16. 100 plus 16 is 116. And now I'm going to take the square root of 116. And the square root of 116 is approximately 10.77. So in other words, the distance that we have from point A to point B is going to be approximately 10.77 units. So again, this is the distance formula. Alright, let's try another example. This time what I've done is I've taken away the graph, and all I have are the 2 points. I have the first point to -3. I'm going to call again that my first point. The second point I have is 5, 6. And what I want to do is find the distance between these 2 points. Alright, so let's start by plugging in the values into the formula. x2, the second x. The second x we have is 5. We're going to subtract the first x. The first x is a 2. y2, the second y value we have is a 6. The first y value we have is a -3. So all I've done is plugged in the values for x and for y. Now we're going to start doing the math here. So the first thing I want to do is I want to subtract 5 minus the 2. Got to do what's in parentheses first. So 5 minus 2 would give me a 3. Now I'm going to do that second set of parentheses there. 6 minus a -3. 6 minus a -3 is going to be a +9. So now I'm going to move on to the next step. And the next step is to square each of those numbers. So I've got 3 squared. 3 squared is going to be 9. 9 squared is going to be a 81. Now let's add those two numbers together. 9 plus 81. 9 plus 81 is 90. And finally we're going to take the square root of 90. And the square root of 90 is approximately 9.4 9. So again, all we're finding here is the distance between these 2 points. So in other words, the distance between the point 2, negative 3 and 5, 6 would be a distance of 9.49. Alright, let's do one more example. I've got the 2 points 0, negative 7 and negative 3, 6. And what I want to do is find the distance between these 2 points. So let's start by plugging in some values into the formula. For x2, we're going to plug in the second x. The second x is a negative 3. We're going to subtract the first x, and the first x is a 0. Now we'll do the same thing with the y's. The second y. The second y is a 6. Subtract that first y. The first y is a negative 7. So there's my values plugged into the formula. Now we're going to start doing the math here. We're going to start by doing what's in the parentheses. So negative 3 minus 0 would be a negative 3. Now I'm going to go ahead and do 6 minus a negative 7. 6 minus a negative 7 is 13. Now I can move on to the next step, and that's to square both of these numbers. So we're going to square negative 3. A negative 3 squared, negative 3 times a negative 3 is going to be a positive 9. And if I square the 13, 13 times 13 is 169. Now let's go ahead and add those two numbers together. 9 plus 169 is going to be 178. And finally, if I take the square root of 178, that's going to be approximately 13.34. So again, that simply means that the distance between the point 0, negative 7 and negative 3, positive 6 would be a distance of 13.34.